Has the stream started yet?
Let me check real quick.
For 80-year-old men.
We're good.
All right. I'd like to start off this debate by doing a little off-time roadmap here. Today we're going to be debating over the resolution that BLM is a non-violent movement. We will first be going over a 5-minute opening speech, followed by a 1-minute 25-second questioning speech, followed by 3-minute rebuttal speeches, followed by a second 1-minute 25 question period, followed by a 3-minute rebuttal speech, followed by questioning, and then followed by a 5-minute end speech. Each of the contestants will have a 3-minute prep time by which they can use at any point during the beginning of their speech, and they can use it for whatever purpose they deem necessary in order to prep themselves for what they are going to say during the speech. I believe that our first affirmative user will be Swedish Chef. So Swedish Chef, whenever you're ready, your 5-minute speech will start.
All right, thank you. For this debate, I'll be taking the stance that the Black Lives Matter movement, or more relevantly and specifically speaking, the Black Lives Matter movement, after its resurgence of relevance after George Floyd's death, is in fact a peaceful movement. As is the case with most things that we see plainly presented to us by the media, it is not in fact the whole truth, but instead what garners the most attention. Over 10,000 Black Lives Matter demonstrations have taken place since May of 2020 alone. Each one of them is highly documented, meaning each time violent behavior is shown, it is highlighted by the media, left or right. Why? Because controversy sells, and either side will do what it takes to grab attention. Another thing that is important to know is that statistics don't always tell the whole truth and can often be misleading. As most have already seen, the statistics that 93% of Black Lives Matter protests between May and August of this year, and on a side note, that number is likely smaller than that, considering activities have been more organized and more peaceful in recent months. But that 93% has been peaceful, and that by itself says plenty. But if you look further into those numbers, it says plenty more. What they categorize as non-peaceful ranges from obvious things such as blatant violence, assault, battery, looting, burning down businesses, to more timid things such as retaliation against police, vandalism, blocking the roads, using barricades, burning tires or other materials, etc. Within that, there are other unknowns. How many people took part in such quote unquote nonviolence? What promoted actions against the police? How many people didn't take part? So few people can commit so much damage, and I don't think that many people realize that. The Mars Climate Orbiter burned up as a result of a unit conversion error, an action that costed approximately $260 million, but you don't blame everyone that took part on that project. You blame the guy that messed up the conversion. I'm using that example to emphasize that only a very small amount of people can cause so much damage, and it is important to take note that not everyone that takes part in such an activity is responsible for such something that's highlighted. I want to close my opening statement by coming from a point of reasoning. I think everyone here can agree, mostly, that violence is not the answer. It does not forward any idea and only worsens a movement or an idea. Plenty of actions that have took place during the summer were disgusting and deplorable. That being said, it is estimated that between 15 and 24 million people took part in demonstrating on behalf of Black Lives Matter, the largest movement that has ever taken place in the United States. To insinuate that the majority, let alone a substantial portion, is violent is a baseless claim and quite frankly, kind of cringe. I concede my time.
Thank you, Alibi, for that speech of 3 minutes.
I'm not Alibi.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you, Swede, for that speech of 3 minutes and 37 seconds. Now we'll be going on to a 5-minute opening speech from Lightning. Now, Lightning, on your first word, your time will begin.
All right. So I just want to say, I don't believe that BML, the movement, the organization, all that, is an inherently violent organization. They have, as we've seen, especially over the last summer, that they can be violent, but it's not specifically in their nature to be violent. But the second you put your name on something violent, or you do something violent in the name of something, you have become violent. Now, I don't have an exact number because the numbers vary from where I look, but over just this summer, from what I've seen, generally it's said that about 19 people have been killed as a result of BML's actions, whether that was directly by BML or by things they've done. Now, that number should have been 0. No people should have died due to their actions or anything they have done, if they were peaceful. Now, personally, in my area, from what I've seen, they have been peaceful. It's mostly been, minor demonstrations and stuff like road blocking, which, can cause some certain problems, but for the most part, it was peaceful. But then, over in Denver, down there have been, some more kind of looting and rioting incidents. Now, like I said, they're not inherently violent, but from what they've done, what I've seen, and what has happened over the course of, the last 8 or so months, they have been violent in the name of their cause to, further, I guess, bolster their views and, show it to the world that they are serious. Now, they definitely could have, been completely peaceful and still gotten the kind of coverage and the support they've gotten, over time, and their actions have undeniably caused a lot of damage. I think in a number I got from just let me find it. So a number I've gotten, I couldn't find specifics, but in Minneapolis alone, they had caused thousands of dollars in damage. And, we saw that Target rioting and looting, that whole thing on kind of like day 1, I would say. That's when things really picked up. And that action itself was violent. Now, could you possibly justify this violence? Maybe. But the point is that there should have been no violence. I concede my time.
Thank you, Lightning, for that speech of 3 minutes and 23 seconds. Now we'll be going on to a 1 minute and 25-second questioning period. I think that Swede should have the first questions, and then if there's any time left over, Lightning, you can ask a question.
Okay.
I would like to use some of my time to think up of a meaningful question.
Sure.
If that's allowed. Okay. All right. I'd like to start my time. So one of the things that you said was that there shouldn't have been any violence at all. You said once you take part in something that isn't violent, or that is violent, that you just become just as bad, or something along those lines. You said. So I'd like to ask you the question: would any movement that, or anything in general that has violence, really? I mean, you see the police force, you see, right-wing movements that have violence. So the people that take part in those activities, would you consider those people to be just as bad? And everyone that supports that movement and that cause, would you consider them to be, as a whole, violent too?
Yes,
I
I
see my
would.
time.
Yes, I would consider them to be well, maybe not as violent, depending on what they've done, but yes, they have been violent. From a lot of the things I've seen, especially with Proud Boys, I've heard they had a few assaults. Now, could you possibly justify these actions? As I've said before, maybe, but as it stands, they are doing something violent in the name of their cause, and they should not be doing anything violent. Yeah, that's my answer.
Can I make a rebuttal to that, or?
Time appears to be up, but
Okay.
no worries, Swede. You have your 3-minute speech will begin on your first word. If you want to use some of your time, you have 2 minutes and 45 seconds left.
Okay. So, in rebuttal to that, it's when you get any sort of movement on this scale, when there's this many people, there's going to be people on any ground. You think of the amount of people you're including in such a movement. You're including people who, you don't know their history. They might be criminal. I'm not saying this as an issue of race. I'm just saying because it's a movement of such large scale, you're going to have people in there that are going to have more violence tendencies, and it's a movement. Like I said, the number that was polled approximated between 15 and 24 million people, and when you get something that big, you're gonna unfortunately have some people that have ulterior motives, and I'm no way am I condemning the actions, but unfortunately, when you get something that's that absolutely massive, and there's that much pent up rage and frustration, you're going to get stuff that boils over into irrational measures, and this I don't think it's fair to classify an entire movement, because that's the basis of the debate, is that you're classifying the entire movement to be violent. I don't think it's fair to consider in any movement to be violent based on the actions of a few radicalized individuals or irrational individuals. I mean, you can take a look at any sort of large scale movement, and you're going to find some sort of radicalization, some people with ulterior motives that can really mess up everything for the few that do things successfully. Just for an example, there's people on either side, and we know this as a fact. I don't even need to bring up what happened at the Capitol, because this is a group of people who had their cause that they felt very justified for, and they're usually considered to be more rational. But when they're pushed to an extreme, when you get them in such of a conglomerate of mass size, you're going to find that the radicalization rears its head. I concede my time.
Thank you. Thank you, Swede, for that speech of 2 minutes and 28 seconds. Now going on to Light. Light, your 3-minute speech will begin on your first word. If you want to use your 3 minutes of prep time, or use any amount of time from your 3 minutes, you are able to. It's up. The decision is up to you.
Okay. So you were basically saying how, there's the actions of a few may not affect the whole, and like, I'm gonna basically use the classic rebuttal to this. You've probably seen it before, but the whole, BML's whole message was, all cops are bad, or all cops are bastards, or something like that, due to the actions of a few. Like, kind of, you saw it specifically with the ones that, kind of, I guess you could say, took the life of George Floyd while he was in their custody. And that's debatable itself, but we're not getting into that. So, basically, like as I said, the second you do something with that name, you add to that. You add to the list of things they've done, and sure, the whole shouldn't have to suffer for the actions of the few, but the actions of the few should not justify the whole. If you get what I'm saying. Now, what if I were to say, oh, the Nazis, some of them did good things, some of them were kind people. That doesn't change the fact that Nazis were, terrible and, did terrible things to the Jews and other groups of people. It just changes the fact that some of them, were, I don't know, good, I guess. Now, by saying, I guess, with, my whole thing of the actions of a few, the violent few, and, like, as I've said, obviously, all of BML and the entire movement and the organization should not have to, suffer under the bias that, some of the protests have turned to riots and that sort of stuff. But you can't change the fact that that is what happened. And, a lot of, I guess you could say, leaders of BML, I don't have specific names right now because, I also saw this happen, a few months ago back in kind of July and that sort of time. But a lot of the so-called, I guess you could say, leaders or top supporters, something like that, were in support of these riots. So, these people that were big in the community also put their names onto these violent actions. And yes, a lot of emotions had been brewing because a lot of things had happened, in such a short time, and they felt that they needed to do something about it. Does that change the fact that they could have done peaceful things about it without this, whole...
Sorry to interrupt you here, Lightning, but your 3 minutes is up. I can give you 30 seconds in order to, but then we're going to have to bring this over to the questioning period.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I think I left off on. I think they got what I was saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then now we're moving to the questioning period. Since Swede asked the question last time, I think it's fair that Lightning asked the question this time. Lightning, the questioning is up to you, and the time starts on your question.
Okay. How much time do I get to come up with a good question?
You can take that time out of your prep.
All right. I think I have a good one.
Okay, you've taken 30 seconds out of your prep time.
Okay. So, Swede, I want to ask you, do you think, from, with all we've seen, that the actions of the few that were, violent, could that sway the entirety of BML, all the supporters, to, become kind of like a militia, to take up arms and become purely violent? And if that did happen, could you justify it?
So I would like to answer that question by just showing exactly what has happened when violence has started. There's definitely a division because the movement is so decentralized. There's a division to an extent on how to get the ends of what the movement desires. And there are everyone knows about the violence. Everyone knows that it happens. It's broadcasted on the news all the time, and everyone has seen it. And yet there are still people who are taking peaceful actions to get to the means. I think that there are definitely some radicalized people who get further radicalized and that have taken part more into the more rational side of things. But I think the vast majority of people have enough rational common sense to deduce that doing such actions will not get them to their ends that they desire. And that's been evident by the vast majority of people doing peaceful actions in order to get their meat.
Sorry to interrupt. We're going to be moving on to the 3-minute questioning periods. Like I said, if you guys want to use any of your time, or Swede will be going first. If you want to use any of your time of your prep to prep your next speech, you can, or you don't have to. The choice is up to you.
Am I going to be asking the next question?
You're going into your 3-minute speech.
Okay. Is this just a continuation of the previous question that he already stated?
You can use your 3-minute speech for whatever you want.
Okay. I think I answered that question pretty well. I mean, it's clearly evident that because the actions that took place this summer that were indeed violent did not create some sort of militia in a mass scale. Of course, the peaceful people remained, and then the violent people remained, and that's took place and it happened. But the people who were violent, I think, stayed violent, and the people that were peaceful stayed peaceful. And I think that division has been pretty clear along those lines for the most part all along. But if I were to continue on to another point, I would like to talk about. Give me a second here. So you said previously in one of your last statements that you said the actions of the few. I can't deny that happens. That's what you said. You can't deny that the actions of the few took place and that those are. And you're absolutely right. And I'm not saying that the actions of the few are by any means. I mean, I like I said in my opening statement, it is. I think we can all agree that those irrational responses and violent actions provide no forward movement for any sort of idea, and I am quite indeed against that. However, you need to understand the size of that. I mean, you said it yourself that the movement as a whole should not suffer. This is your direct quote. I wrote it down. The entire movement should not suffer based on the actions of the few. And you're absolutely right. It shouldn't. It should not be harshly judged based on the actions of the few. And in to summarize, to reroute back to the basics of the topic of the debate, it should not be harshly judged as a violent movement based on the actions of the few. It has violent connotations because of the people who have done negative things, but as a whole, it should not be taken as a violent movement as a whole. I concede my time.
Thank you, Swedish, for that speech of 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Now we'll be going on to a 3-minute speech from Lightning. If you want to use any of your prep time to write down anything you're going to say, you may, or you may not.
Okay. I'm just gonna hop right into it. So you brought up the whole point of me, how I said the entire movement shouldn't, suffer under the actions of the few, and that kind of goes back to what I said at the start. They're not inherently violent. They have the potential for violence, and they have done violent actions, but that doesn't mean all of them is violent. But when you have this big, when you have these riots, these, large damages, these deaths caused, all of this, it culminates and it, joins, it latches on almost kind of like a parasite to the greater movement. And, it is, it's unfortunate that that gets, showed in the media more than, the peaceful side of them. But, it's the truth. If, that basically, if none of those violent actions, had taken place, we wouldn't have seen, people boarding up their homes and, their shops. We wouldn't have seen, buildings on fire and thousands of dollars of damage done, and again, the entire movement shouldn't have to suffer under that, but it does, and it shows that it does. And personally, me coming from the standpoint of they are violent inherently, practically because of the actions of the few, and that's, I would say, myself even, that's kind of an unfair standpoint to have, to say that even though there's, against the greater whole, such this, this such violent smaller proportion, that basically the bigger side of them, that they don't represent that. But, they do, unfortunately. What they've done, they're, because, we've seen it before, in over history many times. There's a few things I could point out, but I don't want to waste any more of my time because I think it's almost up. But basically, the violent actions, what they've done, they're so heavily focused on because we went into this, BML came into conception as this movement that spoke of peace, that spoke, of this unity and this, cause for change. And I've definitely, from what I've seen, it definitely hasn't reflected that original goal. And I believe, in fact, their goal has probably changed.
Sorry to
Over
interrupt,
time.
Lightning, but you're just gone over time. You have 30 seconds to clear up anything, finish your thoughts or finish your sentences if you'd like, or we can just continue to move on.
Yeah, I think we'll move on. I think I
All
got what I
right.
need to say out.
Well, now we will be moving on to the last questioning period, and since Lightning asked the previous question, I think it is fair that Swedish get the questioning this time. And if you need time to think of a question, Swede, you can take that off of your prep.
Thank you. So you mentioned that you believed that their goals have changed in some fashion. I'd like to ask you, in what specific way do you believe have their goals changed?
Okay. Well, I suppose I believe how their goals have changed is, as I said, at the start, in their conception, there were this movement that spoke of peace and unity and equality, because I can't remember, there was a few instances of, black people being unlawfully killed by cops that they kind of, wanted to go against, I guess I could say. And so, at the start, they wanted this peaceful resolution. All they wanted was, the cops to get kind of this reform, I guess you would call it. And, to have the cops that commit these unlawful actions taken out of service. And nowadays, it's this more, it's more heavily racial focused. With you see it, they chant these words of kind of black people in some ways. I don't want to get too racial here, because that's kind of not the focus of the debate. But in this last summer specifically, you've seen this kind of more racial connotation of kind of, oh, for too long white people have done these things, and it's time for black
Sorry to
people to
interrupt
rise
here,
up.
Lightning. So sorry to interrupt again. But we've gone over our questioning time, and I think we'll move it down to the final speech in this debate.
Okay.
This will be a 5-minute end speech, and there are going to be some specific rules for this end speech. The main rule is that you cannot bring any new information. So therefore, the only things that can be discussed in this context are stuff that has already been previously brought up in the debate. So Swedish will be going first with his 5-minute end speech. Swede, if you want to use any of your leftover prep time to write some conclusions, you can. Or if you feel that you are prepared for your 5-minute speech now, then we can do that as well.
How much prep time do I have?
You have 2 minutes and 17 seconds.
I will start when I'm ready. Thank you. All right. I'd like to start off by saying, oh wait, one sec. Can you, Biggs, can you remind me? Just let me know when I hit 1 minute left on my out of my 5 minutes. Did you do that?
Okay. Yes, I can do that.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it. I'd like to start by talking about how, and to address what he previously claimed about how the goals have shifted from an idea of unity to different sort of motives. And I don't know if you're aware of this, because I don't believe I brought it up so far in this debate, but I am a protester for BLM. I have taken part in several dozen protests, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that the message has not changed. The activities may have shifted and changed form. Usually, in my personal experience, has all been peaceful. No one being hurt, no damage being done. And these are massive protests, taking size up to 1,000 people. But our goals haven't changed, and I think that's important to know. We're not trying to gather some sort of militia. We're not trying to make people angry. I think that there are some that have ulterior motives, but you need to realize that one person doesn't speak for the 15 to 24 million people that have taken part in the demonstration. And so, unfortunately, sometimes those people with ulterior motives get a voice, and sometimes those voices are highlighted and put on display as some sort of, oh, this is what the entire movement must be about. You said previously that the leaders endorse the violence and support it. And while I believe this to be an exaggeration, I don't denounce that it's not entirely false. I'm sure that to some degree that there are some leaders somewhere that endorse this. But from my own experience and the people that I have had contact with, they have condemned and denounced completely any violence. They deter anyone who starts to do anything non-peaceful at a protest. They bring them to the front of the protest to the organizers, and the organizers tell them to leave because they don't want that to happen at the protest. And I think that's very important to note, that it's very important to note how these protests are structured. They're not structured, mostly speaking. The places that do it successfully and organized do it in a fashion that is productive and meaningfully. And to reroute on the violent actions that you talked about, you have to take into account context is extremely important. How many it can take, like I said in my opening statement, it takes very few people to commit a mass amount of damage. And while it's still awful, like you said, you can't deny the fact that these things happen. You need to take into account how few of these instances occur and how few people take place in such actions when they do occur. It only takes how few people to light a place on fire. A single person can do it, and I'm sure it has taken multiple people before, but it's not a majority by any stance. And at a protest, it can only take 5-10 people. I think it's silly to claim that these, they're as awful as they are, you can't blame a movement on that. I really think that it's just foolish to do something to that degree, to claim that this entire thing is based towards violence and anger and hatred.
1 minute.
Thank you. I will close my my debate by reiterating and pointing out that, I mean, to an extent, you have agreed with a lot of my points on the entire topic of the debate. You have said that the entire movement shouldn't suffer on the basis of this debate, on the basis of the few, that they shouldn't suffer, that there's only a few amount, and as a whole, the movement is not violent. And I think it's important to just highlight the good and the positive, and the people that have come together and done productive things peacefully. I think it's just bad to tarnish such a positive movement by highlighting the views of the irrational. And finish my time.
Thank you, Swede, for that speech of 4 minutes and 58 seconds. Now we'll move on to the final speech of the debate with Lightning's 5-minute end speech. Lightning, if you want to use your 2 minutes and 30 seconds of prep time, you may. And if you feel that you are prepared, you don't have to as well.
I'll take 30 seconds. So just tell me when that 30 seconds is up.
Okay, as you wish. Your 30 seconds is up.
Okay. So I just want to give you a little bit of well, first I want to just say what you were saying, I guess, how you were saying that from what you've seen, from what you've personally experienced, that you've seen this, how the message hasn't from what you've experienced, the message hasn't changed, and how you've definitely seen this peaceful side of them, and and you reiterated on the point how I said that they shouldn't be represented by just these violent actions because they've done a lot of peaceful stuff, but the fact is that they are being represented by these violent actions because although they do these peaceful things and this larger group is largely peaceful, this smaller group of radicalized extremist and violent rioters have had, I guess, the larger voice and the larger say in things, because they've, I guess, they've done more bad than good, I would say. Starting at that, the first time someone has died caused by BML's actions or directly by BML, starting at that, they got this voice, they got this representation of we are violent. And as even though some of them have tried to shake off kind of this message, it's still there. And they haven't done specifically all they could to get rid of this violent outcropping that's there. And it's at I guess, as I've said before, as we've been saying this whole time, they're not inherently violent, but their actions have their people, especially some of their newer supporters and members, I guess you could say, have definitely become more radicalized and more violent because there is all these emotions swelling up, all this hatred, all this malice, all that. And you've seen definitely a lot of organized violence with, I think there was this whole thing of somebody rented a U-Haul and drove out to a protest or something, and it was armed with bats and wooden planks with nails in them and makeshift shields that had BML written on them. And they associated BML with their violent cause. And although BML may not have associated with them, they still are associated. I think I've said all I need to say. You're a very smart man. You've experienced this firsthand, so I know there's not much I can do to sway your opinion, but I just want to leave you with some, food for thought.
Is that a concession of time?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Light, for that speech of 3 minutes and 30 seconds. This marks the end of the debate. Whenever the judge feels that he has come up with his final verdict of who has won the debate, we'll get there. And then I guess we could get into the people just commenting. So while the judge does his comment, while the judge prepares for his comments, I'd like to make some comments of my own. Take note that this doesn't have any effect on this shouldn't have any effect on the outcome. I thought that Swedish Chef did extremely well during the debate, and I thought both of the contestants did extremely well in their respective areas. I kind of thought that you guys brought new information up near the end of the speech, which that's like a kind of a no-no, which means, but I think both of you guys kind of did it, so I don't think it would really matter in the actual final verdict because you both would be subtracted the same amount of points anyways. So I think you guys did extremely well for your first speech. Although you did say BML a lot, Mr. Lightning, and I was trying not to laugh because I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny.
I changed my nickname. Did you see that?
Yeah, I see it.
All right, so can you hear me?
Oh yes, we can hear you warm.
All right, so I do feel like that both of you did pretty well for your first debate. I think Swedish, he was able to speak a little bit better than you, Lightning. You said repeatedly and BML throughout the debate, which kind of just threw me off. Also, throughout the debate, it kind of seemed like you agreed with a few of his points. And Swedish, he kind of did the same thing, but definitely not to the extent that Lightning did it. So overall, I would say that Swedish won this debate.
So can I?
Pog.
Who's gonna talk first?
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'm not with all the formalities, so I'm not gonna be like, great job, everybody. Just is this open to like criticisms of what the other person's point
Yeah.
was, or like?
No,
is
yeah,
this just,
go-
okay.
go
So,
ahead.
Lightning, you're being a little dramatic with the because a group of violent protesters that showed up with bats and planks having Black Lives Matter written on them immediately associates them with Black Lives Matter. I mean, bro, okay, so listen to this, right? A lot of people on the right like to defend the fact that Proud Boys is not a violent group. They're just counter protesters to a lot of Antifa and Black Lives Matter protesters. But, right, since we're arguing in that case that it's a non-violent group, if I wrote fucking Proud Boys or Proud Boys for Life or whatever the fuck on a fucking gun and I go shoot up, I don't know, a fucking Walmart or a Black Lives Matter protest, does that make me immediately associated with Proud Boys? Or maybe am I just some fucking violent, crazy guy with a gun that ideals line in that? Does that mean that that group specifically associates with me or shares the same ideals I do? No, it just means that I'm some fucking crazy guy that's really dangerous. Just because somebody supports something does not mean that it represents the whole entire idea. And you keep mentioning people going around screaming like genocidal white, so not to that extent. You didn't say that specifically, but like a lot of like anti-white claims. I think one of them was like the whites have been oppressing blacks too long and it's time for us to come on the uprise or something. And that for the most part is true. Historically,
Yeah.
in American history, if you look throughout it, who's been oppressing blacks? It's been the whites. They're tired of being oppressed by those same people. Those same people that introduced things like the crime bill introduced by Joe Biden, a white man. Whites that move crack cocaine through their fucking neighborhoods. Ronald Reagan. They are talking about these whites. When they say, I'm tired of the whites oppressing us, they're not talking about fucking Jerry who lives down the street who's just getting by ends meet at a fucking Best Buy job, okay? They're not talking about these random people. And these acts of violence that you're seeing are mainly escalated by cops. And this isn't just me giving some random theory. This is proven through statistics. In Portland alone, they had an 87. Keep in mind, this is in one city. So in Portland alone, they had an 87% peaceful, right? Like 87% of their protests were peaceful. Federal agents had been moved in to keep the peace. And as America does when they tend to keep the peace, they actually make things a lot worse. Because then their ratings are the percentages of peaceful protests actually lowered to 47%. What's even more interesting is they were supposedly there to protect a courthouse. When they left, the courthouse was fine. There was just some graffiti on the walls, and I don't even think it was there. I don't know. I didn't look at the courthouse, but I definitely know it's still there. It hasn't been destroyed. So the idea that these people are not inherently violent, but that a national group, and to some extent global group, is responsible for the actions of the few and are associated with them is completely intellectually dishonest, for one. Because
I'd like to give him a chance to
Yeah, go
respond, and I'd like to get into some criticisms, like towards
Green Machine.
Yeah, what's up?
Really quick, I just wanted to say something, if it's all right with you. Just
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
I think part of the problem with the debate, it's not anybody's fault. I just think that the debate focus is kind of what the problem was. I think a better question, rather than is BLM violent, would have been, is BLM productive towards its goals? Because I think the violence aspect takes you in a different direction. I think it would have been a much more productive debate.
Well, what I was going to say is that I think from Swede, I didn't get a sense of what BLM's goals were until maybe right at the end a little bit. And I feel like that was like a problem, you know?
Right. I think the framing of the debate was just part of the issue there.
Yeah, I could have done that, but again, I was trying to steer away from what happened in the protest, the goals, what they wanted,
Mhm.
because
Okay.
that wasn't what it was.
Well, I
about.
mean,
Now-
if isn't that nonviolent though? Like,
now that the winner of the debate has been decided,
Wait, hold
I
on.
have
Wait,
some, I have some comment.
Worm,
I
why
have
am I
some
being told
actual
Wait,
to
who
watch
won?
my fucking mouth?
Swede.
Oh, okay.
Wait, hold on a second. Why am I being told to wash my fucking mouth by Worm? Hold on, what's going on there?
What?
I just got pinged.
What? No one's
What?
telling me
Oh,
to
no.
watch your mouth.
No,
no,
no. Somebody
you-
said it. It was
Oh
I
no,
think they
it's
were-
it's question mark guy. I don't know who that is, but
Oh,
yeah.
they
I-
were just
he-
joking, bro.
yeah.
Yeah,
That was something they said earlier.
Yeah, I got
it was just
I
that
got
he
some
was replying to
comments.
Worm in the previous
I got some
one.
actual comments. So throughout this entire debate, while I was moderating, I was thinking about how I would personally argue the resolution, and so if I was arguing on Swede's side, I probably would have done exactly as Swede has done. I thought Swede did a very perfect job with his arguments. Lightning, I probably wouldn't have argued the same way that you did. I thought you conceded to way too many parts of Swede's arguments that he did take advantage of in the end, which very proud of you, Swede, for taking advantage of that. And I think if the end speech, you could have been a little more aggressive with how you decided to explain why you won, because that's kind of the whole point of the end speech, kind of to explain why I have won this debate because of X, Y, and Z. And Swede did that more towards the end, which that's pretty good. I personally would have argued, because the resolution was that BLM is a non-violent movement. I personally would have argued on Lightning's side that saying that it's a non-violent movement is not entirely accurate, and neither would saying that it was a violent movement. Because by saying that it's a non-violent movement, it would be signifying that the movement preaches non-violence, which it doesn't. Some of the people who believe in the BLM cause preach non-violence, and they do act to the cause with non-violence, but the BLM cause isn't non-violence. The BLM cause is to get rid of discrepancies and get rid of systematic racism within the not just the justice system, but within America entirely. The method by which they go through it isn't actually a part of the cause itself, although a lot of the members preach nonviolence. It's not a part of the cause.
Can you like restate like that last part? I kind of like went in and out.
Oh
Like,
yeah. I would have argued that saying that BLM is a nonviolent organization isn't entirely accurate because the movement, because the movement itself isn't nonviolence. The movement itself is that there are systematic discrepancies and that we need to solve them. It doesn't say how we solve them. It just says that we need to, and that could be through violence, as demonstrated.
That may be a good attack against Swede, but that could also be easily countered.
Yeah. That would have been a more productive debate, in my opinion.
I think it would have been, yes. It would have been a better approach. I could say how I would have countered that right now, but that's beyond the point. But yeah, that's actually a good attack.
Can I bring up one thing that I wasn't able to bring up during the debate?
Sure.
So one of the things that I wanted to bring up was the one point, the similarity between the police and and BLM was brought up in the matter of BLM has some violent people, therefore you can't blame the cops for being violent or something along those lines, because you can't say that all of them are bad because whatever. And I would just like to highlight the differences because the main thing is it's not it's not only just some people like to downplay it on the cops' parts about, there's only just a few deaths. It's not just the deaths, it's the policing, it's the intrusion of privacy, it's the harassment, it's the overreactions, it's just a lot of the things that the police do. But that's kind of besides the point. What I really wanted to talk about is that they're fuck, I lost my point.
The point
They,
is that they have been given power to uphold laws.
Right. They're in a higher level of scrutiny. They need to be held under certain jurisdiction over what they're doing and the actions that are taking place within their, they're being put in such a level of power to be able to dictate right versus wrong and be able to use such powerful force among those lines, absolutely destroy a life at the snap of their fingers. And and the fact that so much corruption takes place within police lines is just disgusting. But I think it's one of the biggest things is that I've heard from rational people who say all cops are bastards, is that the thing is that the thing about that saying is that what makes all of them in quotations, because I'm not all fall under this definition, but most I'd say they're trying to explain and allow those conditions on behalf of the police officers that do wrongdoings. They try and explain it and say, oh, it's okay, it's fine, look at what the context, oh well, he was high on drugs, so it's okay to kill him, or whatever, and I think that the fact that you try and defend those things makes you just as bad as them to a degree. I hate the people who try and defend the rioting. I don't like that. And I think the vast majority of people who support Black Lives Matter would say the same thing, that the people who are going out and looting and destroying are not doing anything beneficial, and they're willing to condemn them and say that that's not okay, that's fucked up.
Can I say something to like add upon like that specific point? So what people don't really understand is that there's a connotation that's associated with being Black, that you're angry, that you're loud, that you're aggressive, that you're intimidating. So when it comes on to Black Lives Matter, people really did not want to associate their specific movement with violence, because that would just take away from their point to begin with. There would be a whole bunch of like racial slurs and a whole bunch of racist connotations towards the movement just because it's fighting for Black people. And I feel like people like disregard that point, and I think it's a very important thing, because when Democrats were talking about, or whoever the case may be, was talking about that Black Lives Matter is a valid movement, but we do not like the writing and the lures, is because they're to separate the two. Because if you make the two together, like a lot of people who believe Black Lives Matter like is a violent movement, you take away from the message to begin with. Because to be honest with you, even if you were to take away the whole race aspect of Black Lives Matter and just say we're criticizing the justice and police system, it's an actual valid criticism if you actually like take away the race aspect. And I think people just like to water down and assume instead of actually looking at the points at hand.
I think it was Obama who said that. I'm not sure. He said something along those lines, though.
Oh, which line is the fact that the nonviolence is not okay? Or the
BLM, but not the rioters and the looters.
Right. And Joe Biden said something along those lines as well. He's openly said that he's not in favor of defunding the police, and I have several other high-end Democratic politicians have said the same thing, and I would agree with that.
I think that BLM's biggest problem is optics. I really do. I think if you look at BLM objectively, I think that they're not so different than a lot of movements that we've seen in the past, and I don't think that they're objectively bad. I just think that it's a very to the average person, it's very hard to get a very objective grip on BLM because there's a lot of optic issues. I think I don't know.
I feel like I really don't like the optics criticism when it comes on to BLM, because personally I feel like how do I say it? I feel like the media plays a role as long as I
Just
feel
cut
like the
out.
media plays a role as well as uh political peoples, because stuff um what is it called, like ACAB, like defund the police. These are stuff that people on the ground, that activists use. This isn't something that's like that all of a sudden politicians need to take up in order to justify their point. They're just making us look bad. I don't think it's BLM itself. I think it's politicians. That's just me.
I mean, when I talk about optics, I think so. It's a hard problem because you have the violence, and sure, it's not the majority of people there are not getting violent, but it's just like the six, where you have people who are there legitimately because they're upset, because they're passionate, and then the violent types who kind of ruin it for everybody, and that's a problem. And one of the things that is difficult for BLM to do because of their insistence to stay decentralized is they struggle. They can disavow all day, but it's difficult for other people to see that, just as a result of the fact that, well, what really defines a BLM member? Someone who goes to a BLM activist rally. And if I go to a BLM activist rally, I'm official BLM until I get violent, and then I'm disavowed. Well, if the lines are this vague, it's a very, I don't want to say unsolvable.
Pretty hard to solve.
I wouldn't even say you have to go to a BLM protest in order to be a part of BLM, to be honest with you.
I'd agree with that. Like,
Oh,
there's
my
definitely
my
many
But like
audio cut out.
even when it
Can you
comes
repeat
on
that,
to
Big?
like even when it comes on to us, because like this is why I say the media takes a role. So if you use a term that nobody knows what it actually means and puts it on to the news and put negative connotation around it, automatically the average person is going to think it's a negative thing and that we should not use it. That's how propaganda works, and that's how, like, actively speaking, there's a lot of distrust when it comes on to BLM. So like, excuse me, so like it's really hard for me to like to talk about this because it's really like, ew, I'm not gonna lie. I'll be quiet now.
Well, it's a personal issue for you, right?
Yeah, I'm a black woman.
I mean, look, here's the thing.
Which is
Propaganda
why
in the way that the media
perspective
works
is
is
valid.
a universal. Thank you for
Well,
that green machine.
Like in this connotation, what? We're a bunch of white guys talking about this. That's like a real thing to bring up and point at. Is that she has a valid perspective.
I'm not saying she doesn't. I'm just fucking around. Look,
Yeah.
Right. What do you mean, white guy? Look at me.
Also, yeah,
I'm saying badly
Hell
This
yeah.
is evolving now.
only 50%. Look, I'll say propaganda and the way the media handles shit. This is not. I'm not saying this is a criticism of what you're saying, Pete, but this is universal. This happens on the right, the left, the up, the down. We're all manipulated against each other, and the media, honestly, like, fucking trash, and they are manipulative as fuck, and no
Yeah,
one is
like
safe from that kind of shit.
the thing that aggravates me the most is that there are people who that people will sit down and have the conversation with, and even if they were to explain what they mean by these phrases or acronyms, they're still, against them, which makes actually no sense, to be
Well, I
honest
can
with
kind
you.
of give you
Like,
some context for that.
if like I've had a conversation with someone who had like cops lives matter, that energy, and I explained to them what BLM was, and what the actual criticism of like the police and the system and this, that, and the third, right? And they actually turned around to me and was like, actively though, I really don't care. I'm gonna just be against your movement either way. And it was really weird. It's really weird to see those people.
I
can't.
mean, those
speak for
people exist.
but I
Those
can
people
tell you-
exist on both sides. Unfortunately, there's people who just don't care enough in order to inform themselves. I mean, Triggered Gains is one of them. He's just very smart. He will go against your point regardless of what you're trying to say, and he will then denounce anything that you're trying to say just because it goes against what he's trying to say.
What if
He
we
will
all
s-
just go hard racist then? Can we turn Triggered left?
I honestly,
Oh,
if the world was racist, I think Triggered would be woke as fuck. I think he's very reactionary in that way. I think that's what it really. I don't know. This is my thing, right? Because the problem that BLM has right now is the same problem actually that the police have, where it's like a few bad apples. It's literally what it is. It's just we haven't reached a point yet where there's a collective realization. Like, yeah, systemically. I don't even want to say systemically. You have a lot of fucked up systems within the police force. I'm anti-police as shit, so you won't see me simping for the police. But there is truth to the fact that you have a lot of police officers out there who are genuinely hurt and kind of like really fucking pissed off because they're like, look, I go out there, I fucking risk my life every day. I work these hours. I put literally my life at risk for the populace just to get called, a
Like,
fascist.
this
And
is
it's the same deal with BLM where it's like, look, I'm trying to affect change. I'm an empathetic person. I want to
kind of weird
help
with the
those who
person
have not helped,
who
who have not had
spoke.
help. And there's a few bad apples who ruin this for everybody. So there needs to be some sort of like collective realization.
I don't actually think that if somebody's talking about, oh, fuck.
She cut out.
You cut out.
She did.
She's just fucking tired. You there?
We'll circle back.
Gas pipe blew up.
We'll circle back. Fuck you, Blue.
No, like I'm dead serious. Like when people say
You
'cause
cut
I'm
out.
a-
You
I'm
cut
like
out.
I'm a I was basically saying a hit dog will holler. Like dead seriously. Like an example, when people talk about like anti they're really not anti-religion, they're really anti-Christian, but that's not the point. What happened is that they'll criticize like Christianity or whatever the case may be. I can't really sit here and like cry my eyes out and be like, oh my gosh, you're attacking me for being a Christian when they're actually having valid criticism. That's really stupid. That means you're ignorant, you don't understand what's going on. That's exactly how I feel, and I feel like hit dog will holler at the end of the day. That's exactly how I feel. If you're a police
So you
officer
feel like
and you feel attacked because people are criticizing the police and saying ACAB and shit like that, that means either A, you're ignorant, or B, you're actually like racist. But that's just me.
Well, I disagree with that point. I definitely think that if you go out there and you put your heart and soul into your job trying to protect people, because there are definitely good cops out there, and I applaud the cops that do go out there and try their hardest, but there are definitely ones out there that exist. And to go out there and work so hard to try and protect people and then be called, all these terrible names and such, I'm sure it's a real culture shock for them and be really terrible. I mean, I don't know if I went out there and got out and I don't know, and something doing that I love, that I worked my ass off every day for something I was passionate about, helping other people.
If you understand the movement, then you're not going to feel attacked.
Well,
like
it depends. It depends. Hang on, Alibi.
Of them.
Hang on.
Like that doesn't make any sense in my
Hang
opinion.
on.
I'm so sorry.
So there's, you don't need to be sorry. There's a bunch of different sayings though that can be interpreted as really harsh. I mean, like I said, I'm definitely. I mean, as I'm sure most of you can tell, I'm pretty rational when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I definitely am aware of the more irrational side. And there are plenty of people that take part in this movement that are irrational towards police officers. There's people that go after their police officers' families sometimes and try and like oust these people for just doing their job. And I don't think that's okay. I mean, you can definitely be a cop and realize the problems that are going on. But at the same time, regardless of what you recognize, you will still be ousted by some of these radicalized people. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, the radicalized people are the people that have the loudest voice because people like to highlight the radicalized ones. And then when those voices get highlighted, that makes the police officers feel more under attack.
I don't know, man. I'm not saying you're supposed to like knock down a policeman out a door and attack their family and all of this extra stuff. I just personally believe that if this is how I see it, if it's a movement and they're attacking or criticizing your specific group of people, I don't.
Cut out again. We can't hear you.
Phoenix, can you hear us?
Anti-white thing you guys like to say. I don't understand that. How
You keep cutting out there. You keep cutting out.
Hello?
We can hear you
We
now.
can't. Oh,
Pink, you
You
there?
muted yourself.
Oh, okay. By the way, guys, I have a question for you. So I have an uncle who was a New York police officer in the 70s. And I might be able to, if I can get up there with him and show him how to get onto Discord, I might be able to get him on here to like field some questions and kind of like describe his experiences. Because New York in the 70s was a fucking wild time.
Lecture?
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, look, I will say this. He's
Oh.
crazy. He is a crazy person. He is a legit crazy person. I love him to death. Please be nice to him, but I am willing to reach out to him and have him come on if you guys are interested.
Yeah, of course.
I'm so confused. What's going on?
I was just saying,
you-
I have an uncle who was a New York police officer during the 70s. His Puerto Rican ass is a little crazy. And he's definitely, we'll say he's not PC. But I'm definitely willing to have him come on and try to get him to, answer questions, kind of like talk about his experiences, that kind of thing.
So hang on, give me 2 seconds. I'd totally be open to that. I just want to say, Bing Princess, your mic keeps cutting out, and we're having a hard time hearing you and understanding what you're saying because the mic is cutting in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. Can you guys hear me?
No, it's good.
Yeah,
We're just not ignoring. I just don't want you to think that we're ignoring you because we're not. We're just having a hard time sometimes because you keep cutting in and out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be open to that. I definitely have a lot of questions for him. Would he be open to taking criticism, or would this be something where it'd have to be very like treating him like a nice old man? And
my uncle is he's a Puerto Rican New Yorker, so he's loud and he's a little kooky, but he's not a pussy. He's not gonna get all upset in his feelings. He's gonna be blunt. But he's respectful. He's very respectful. He's very empathetic. He's very kind. He might not be entirely PC.
Is he rational though? That's the question. Is he?
It depends. The reason he's back in New York right now is because him and another Puerto Rican in Arizona were putting rocks in front of each other's doors in some sort of like Puerto Rican bitch fight. He's rational. He's rational. He's just a little, like I said, he's a little crazy, bro. He will be rational. He can tell you guys some stories about what he saw, what he didn't see in New York. He can give you guys, the blue line perspective. And he's absolutely empathetic. He's not a racist. He's not at all. Yeah. I mean, he's a very interesting guy. He's a very, very, very interesting guy. Very eccentric.
When is the next debate?
That depends on what topic we choose, as well as who is willing to debate that topic.
If anyone wants to debate me, I'm not
I
sure.
want to ask Worm something. How well did the stream do?
It's still going right now.
Well, I want to know how well it did.
We have 6 people watching.
Well, then,
we got 2 likes.
Stream's going, so everybody needs to check out my
3 of those viewers are me.
viewers.
3 of those viewers are me.
Shut up.
3 are that guy, and then 3 is everybody else.
One of them is my friend.
I liked it. I also shared it.
Is it on
shared it
Twitter?
to Twitter.
I need to look it up. Are we doing it on Twitch?
Jonathan,
No, this is
post
YouTube,
Cox
Greco.
in the chat.
Oh, this is a YouTube stream. Oh, crap.
Worm, can we stream it to Twitch, or would we get taken down? Who's familiar with Twitch?
Are we YouTubers now? Does this mean we're YouTubers?
Guys,
Yes.
can we become VTubers?
I'll become a VTuber. I'll be the head of the Proclin Party VTuber.
Guys, let's play PUBG and go on the bridge.
You guys.
Yes.
You guys,
No.
hold on. Jonathan does not want us to be VTubers.
Who?
He's our guy who's in the audience right now.
He
What
doesn't
is-
want us
he's
to
my-
be VTubers?
He's my friend. He's my
What
friend.
is
I know him.
VTubers?
Get out of here, Jonathan!
It's when
It's like
you're
a
ugly and
video
you put
blogger.
a little.
We're becoming VTubers, and it's gonna happen.
What
Ew,
is
don't
that?
do that.
Also,
That's
Jake, I heard
disgusting.
that.
A vlogger?
thing.
Shut up,
A
Greg.
VTuber.
All right,
Virtual
we're gonna get
YouTuber.
back on track.
Oh shit! I didn't
Get
even know
back
what.
on track,
What?
guys.
You guys
We
know
can't-
those?
Wow.
I want to debate someone, or I
Let's
want to.
debate.
I want to pose
Okay,
a hot.
hold on,
take.
you guys, hold on for a second. You guys, stop talking. Stop talking. Are we going to
Okay.
continue with this discussion, or are we ending it here?
Discussion about what? BLM?
Yeah.
If you want
I
it.
think all things have been said. I don't have anything
Yeah.
bad.
I think we're ready to move on and do a different topic.
I can do
All right,
it.
now I'm gonna
I can
end
go
it here then.
hours.
Okay.
I can go hours.
Hell yeah.
Bye,
See you guys.
channel. You guys know those cookies they have in the supermarket?